The mail never stops.
Here comes the mailman.
Mail time.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. The mail's here. When you control the mail, you control information.
I'm ready for all today.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the SleeperWire podcast. Yeah, you see that? You see that, Chris? I'm excited. I'm excited to talk today because we're talking mailbag today. We're answering your questions. I'm your host, Nick Summerall. With me is, of course, my co-host, Chris. It's a two-man show today. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome, man. Is this our first mailbag episode of the season?
This is our first mailbag show of the new season.
Terrific.
I mean, yeah, it is still off season, but we're getting dangerously close. I mean, we're middle of July, powering through the month. Before you know it, it'll be August. We'll be talking about training camp. We'll be talking about preseason. And then 4 weeks later, it'll be the season. Everybody will have drafted their
teams. Do you remember like when you were a kid and it was Christmas Eve and you just couldn't wait to wake up to Christmas to presents on Christmas morning, so you just couldn't sleep? That's basically how this entire month is, just not being able to get any sleep because we're just so excited to get the season started.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel. Anyways, guys, before we get started today, as I mentioned, we are doing a mailbag show. We've gathered a bunch of your guys' questions for us to talk about. But before we get there, I want to tell you guys about a contest we're running. You probably heard it now quite a few times. And I want you guys to know, I mean, this will be ending soon. It'll be ending by preseason. You know, when the first preseason game is coming up, that's it. That'll be the last time you can enter into this contest before we select a winner to get an autographed Antonio Brown jersey. Chris, you'd like to have Antonio Brown jerseys autographed, wouldn't you?
Even as a Colts fan, I can confidently say absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I had him on one of my teams a couple years ago. It was a year like he had almost like 1,800 yards receiving, had a dominant year. And I was like, I mean, unfortunately, I got to the finals, didn't friggin' win because somebody had to poop the bed for me. But, you know, I loved Antonio Brown. He's great. One of my favorite fantasy football players today. And, you know, you can get stuff like that on pristineauction.com. PRISTINE.auction.com. Wow, I'm fumbling over this. And they got a lot of great other things besides, like, autographed jerseys. I mean, they got sports memorabilia, like, you know, you can get signed baseball, signed football. I mean, I've got a couple of my own jerseys that I've signed, like Gale Sayers, framed, and really nice frame. I have a Walter Payton signed photo, you know, and I got my Jordan Howard autographed jersey, so I'm excited about that. So, guys, please go to pristineauction.com. And go to iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you find our podcast. Leave a 5-star review and email us at sleeperwire@gmail.com. You leaving a nice review for us, and that'll enter you into the contest. All right, guys, let's get the show going. All right, let's continue on and answer some of your damn questions. Well, we'll start off with Romo Tudez. Are there any defenses you are seeing as potentially horrendous, thereby forcing game script into a pass-heavy offense while abandoning the run? Chris, who off the top of your head fits this narrative?
You know, I read this question and my mind immediately went to what I think is the worst team in the NFL this year, and that's the Jets. Second worst would be the Bears, but that's the Jets, the worst team.
Wow, okay. I think the Browns still fit that bill. Thank you.
See, I'm not sure. I think the Jets are going to be the worst team this year. They didn't do much to bolster that defense, which really wasn't that great last year to begin with. So they're going to be down a lot. So they're going to be throwing. Bilal Powell's a capable back, and Matt Forte is still there, but they're going to be the worst team in the league. Their defense is ranked in the bottom 5 on a whole bunch of different sites. Powell's still going to be useful because whoever the quarterback is, whether it be Josh McCown for the few games that he's healthy or Christian Hackenberg, they're still going to check down to Powell even when they're down because it's a passing play. But I think they're going to turn into a pass-heavy offense out of necessity. Now, whether it's a good pass-heavy offense is one thing, but I think they're going to have to throw.
I mean, that's totally true. Another team I really see being that way is the 49ers. They're also a terrible team. And they have Brian Hoyer, they got Pierre Garçon, and they've got the duo in the backfield of Carlos Hyde and Joe Williams. Now, I mean, I talked about how I think Carlos Hyde is going to be a bust this year. I still believe that. But I think more so he's a bust either because he's going to get injured again, or because I think that he's going to get his job overtaken by Joe Williams. So one of those two guys are probably going to see pass plays because the defense is horrendous as well. And I just see them, they're going to need to pass the ball more than probably most teams would like to. I don't think they'll be able to establish a successful run game there.
Yeah, the difference is that Hoyer and Garçon are completely capable fantasy plays. Hoyer's a good fantasy quarterback. Pierre Garçon's great in PPR.
And they have Kyle Shanahan as well.
And you have Kyle Shanahan, who last time that Garçon was with Shanahan, he led the league in targets and catches. The Jets don't have that. Like Quincy Enunwa, I mean, when your best wide receiver is Quincy Enunwa, you're going to have a bad time.
You're going to have a bad time. Oh, man. Yeah, but that's. I think those are the teams. I think we can agree on that. I mean, I like your pick of the Jets. I agree that's going to be another team that ends up just like that. So let's go on to the second question here. This is from Soul, S-O-W-L-E. If you're taking wide receiver in rounds 4 and 5, who are you hoping to land? Chris, why don't I start with you on this one?
All right, yeah, I already got my answer ready. I'm going based off the ADPs from Fantasy Football Calculator for a 12-team PPR. I absolutely love Golden Tate. I loved him last year even. I actually traded for him when he was doing really, really bad at the beginning because he's just such a good player in PPR, and he can put up monster weeks. 3 straight seasons with 90-plus catches, finishing as a wide receiver too. Anquan Boldin, who was a big part of that Lions offense last year, is gone. He's a free agent. Nobody signed him. Golden Tate should see an increase in targets due to that. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with more than 100 catches by the end of this year. So he's more of a round 5 guy. When we're talking about round 4, I really like Alshon Jeffrey, and we're actually going to talk a little bit more about him. Jarvis Landry, always great in PPR. Terrell Pryor, I think, is going to have a good season. Sammy Watkins, also in round 4. So I really do like most of the wide receivers going around in rounds 4 and 5.
Yeah, when I look on Fantasy Football Calculator as well, there's a lot of decent talent that's going about, 4th round or so. I mean, I see names like Allen Robinson dropping to the 4th round. I know, everybody's scared of him now because Blake Bortles still sucks. He hasn't really gotten any better. But he's the number 1 receiver of the Jaguars. I mean, that's clear as day. Most of the targets in the passing game are going to Allen Robinson. So I still think 4th round value really isn't bad as your wide receiver too. And then, provided that Keenan Allen stays healthy, that could be a really nice 4th round steal. I really like that one. And then as far as 5th round, Michael Crabtree probably is one of my favorites because everybody's still stuck on Amari Cooper being, the guy. And yeah, okay, maybe he'll develop into that. I still don't think this is the year. I think this is still going to be Michael Crabtree show because Amari Cooper's going to get the number 1 corners and everything on him. And Crabtree's just going to be free to be in the red zone to get all the touchdowns from Derek Carr. So Michael Crabtree's probably my favorite in the 5th round. All right, let's get on to the next question. This is from Robert 1011. Yeah, I could have said 1011, but whatever. I'm doing it my way. By how many yards does Jordan Howard lead the next closest runner at the end of the season? I think he meant to say closest runner, right?
He did mean to say closest. That was a typo in the show notes.
Oh, okay. So that's you.
Yes, that was my fault.
Got it. Okay.
Here, let me put that T in there.
Lead the next closest rusher at the end of this season. Okay. Well, I'll take this one first because it's my boy Jordan Howard, and Robert has always been a big proponent of Jordan Howard. He's also loves him just as much as I do, probably, which is great to hear that I'm not alone, at least. But listen, I mean, I don't know if I can say that Jordan Howard's going to finish as the leading rusher, but he was second last year. Now, I mean, maybe the yards are a little less. Maybe he falls to 1,200 yards rushing instead of 13. Maybe. But as the only piece really in the Bears offense that actually, is talented at this point, or at least has proven that they're talented, I mean, I don't think he'll be that far off. I could see him still finishing in the top 5 rushers. I don't think it'll be that far off. I mean, but, it always depends on who gets injured, and there's a lot of factors that go. Like, last year was an outlier because there were so many running backs that were healthy from week 1 to the end. That was unbelievable. You know what I mean, Chris?
Yeah, we usually see a lot of injuries, and there weren't a whole lot last year at the premium position.
Right. So that's why I'm saying that I think Jordan Howard, depending on how things turn out, like, I love Jordan Howard, as I've mentioned here, but I also can be realistic. Like, I'm not going to say, he's rushing for 2,000 yards and, going to break records and all the shit. Like, no, I'm not going to say that because that's ridiculous. I like to think of myself a little more credible than that. But, I'd say if he finishes with the 1,200 rushing yards and maybe gets an uptick in receiving, maybe he worked on that this offseason with fixing up his vision, like I mentioned earlier this year. Really he slimmed down a bit. He's done everything right from what I've seen in offseason. So maybe he's gonna surprise. But I'd say, as far as to the next closest rusher, I could see it being like maybe 150 yards out, 200 yards, and there could be, there'll probably be a few guys in between there. But I don't know if we'll see a guy rushing for, 1,500 yards plus this season. I don't know. What about you, Chris? What do you think?
I think you completely missed the point of that entire question. You just wanted another soapbox to talk about how good Jordan Howard is. I think that's what you were.
No, the question was, how many yards does Jordan Howard lead the next closest rusher at the end of the season?
Right, and then you went on to talk about how great he is.
I'm not saying he's gonna. But I'm not saying he's gonna lead in rushing yards. Is what I'm saying.
Exactly. That's what he was implying.
I think that he'll be in the top 5, and I don't think he'll be.
Nobody's arguing that he's going to be a running back 1. I mean, I absolutely agree. I think he can probably put up top 5 rushing yards as well, but I don't think he's going to lead, so therefore I don't think he's going to lead the second place person if he's not in the first. But there's a whole bunch of arguments for and against Howard in the Howard versus Melvin Gordon great debate that you and I did, Nick.
Right.
And I know I don't really have to tell Robert 1011 this because he is one of our loyal listeners, so he's listened to that, and he made his choice towards Howard on that end. So you won him over there.
Well, and, of course, too, he's mentioned to me that he's read my article, between him, talking when I talked about how he won't sub for the same sophomore slump that Todd Gurley suffered. So, there's that, too. I mean, we have put out a ton of information about Jordan Howard, mostly because would you get over yourself? All right. Well, we have one more question involving Jordan Howard up next.
Yay.
Yay. This is from SB Bot Dude 005. Ajayi versus Howard, risks, concerns, pros and cons, etc. I will be honest, I am tired of this question. I have seen this one so many times.
I see this all over SleeperBot. Every day someone posts this question over and over and over again. And I appreciate people wanting to know the answer to these questions because these are important answers. But personally, I'm tired of saying the exact same thing over and over again. So I'm going to go ahead and direct this guy who's also a loyal listener. I mean, I've seen that he's listened to our shows before, which is fantastic. We did the great debate that had Howard in it, and then we also did another great debate that was DeMarco Murray versus Jay Ajayi. So we have two different great debates with Howard and Ajayi. Arguments for and against these guys. There's more information in those great debates about those two players than we can possibly put into a mailbag show. So I'm going to direct you back to those and go listen to those. They're short shows, 20 minutes long max. Listen to those, and that'll give you a much better idea than we could possibly do in 2 minutes here.
And, another thing I'd like to bring up, too, is in the beginning of our show last week, where we talked about sleepers and busts, I talked about how I thought Jay Ajayi was going to be a complete bust. And you can go back to that episode and listen to that information as well. And listen, the Howard information I've given is almost endless at this point. So, I mean, if there's something you want to know about Howard, I mean, you could always reach out to us too individually if you'd like, but listen, if you want an answer, I'll give you one quick answer here so that you could also refer to this episode. And then when people ask me the Jai versus Howard, I'm going to say, go back to this episode so that you can find out where else you can find it. Okay? And for me, it's Howard. It's not even close. I've mentioned why I think Jai is going to be a bust. Go back and listen to that episode. It was Sleepers and Busts. Okay? So that way you'll be able to find it. And I'm not trying to be rude here, like Chris said. I mean, you're, SB Bot dude. I mean, you've listened to our show and we love that. We appreciate that. But these kind of questions, it's just, we've answered them 100 times and we just can't spend any more time answering the same question.
Yeah, so and it's nice that we have talked about it before, so we can refer you back to that. Also, I didn't answer the question. It's clearly Howard for me. Howard over Ajayi. I don't think Ajayi finishes as an RB1. I don't know. I can't even fathom how some analysts would take him as the fourth overall running back, taking him over McCoy, over Gordon. That blows my mind. I think the answer is clearly Howard here.
I've seen that too, and I don't understand it either. As much as we had the debate with Gordon and Howard, I'm still on the fence. I would probably still take Gordon over Howard, but it's close for me. I think the top running backs are Johnson, Bell, Elliott, and then it's McCoy, Gordon, and then for me it's Howard after that. And Freeman I might have a toss up with too, but that's about where I see it. And Ajayi doesn't come close to those guys, in my opinion.
Right.
But all right, let's move on. This is from CP33. Who has a greater chance of being a disappointment for where you draft them for the second year in a row? Todd Gurley or Allen Robinson?
Mind if I field this one?
Yeah, go ahead. Take this one first.
All right, so if I had to choose one, I'm going to go with Allen Robinson. Another great debate topic was Gurley versus Miller, which we did last week. I accidentally wrote last year in the show notes, so it kind of threw me off. Last week has a lot of really good information on Todd Gurley. As I was researching the Rams last week, I found that I really do think Gurley is not going to repeat what he did his sophomore season. I think he's going to step back up. I have him ranked in the top 12. I think he's going to be an RB1. Comfortable taking him, mid towards the end of the second round. This week, we have another one. We're actually getting ready to record this one right after this show. Another great debate that I'm doing with our other co-host / new producer, Mike. The Jaguars, they want to be a running team. They drafted Leonard Fournette with the 4th overall pick. They drafted an offensive tackle in the second round. They traded, essentially, it was 2 trades in one, but they essentially traded Julius Thomas to the Dolphins for Brandon Oliver to bolster the offensive line. Allen Robinson only had 7 fewer catches last season than his 2015 season. He went from 80 catches down to 73, but 517 fewer yards and 8 fewer touchdowns. So more than 500 fewer yards on just 7 fewer catches. The Jaguars were dead last in run plays run in the red zone with only 98 last season. Dead last. They just rarely made it to the red zone. Averaging 6.1 plays inside the 20 per game. That's not what I want in a wide receiver. Now, Allen Robinson is the guy to own in Jacksonville, but I don't see him returning back to his 2015 form when the stats for this are just that bad. If they want to be a running team and they don't make it to the red zone, that doesn't bode well.
My problem is I just think that comparing the teams, what I see in Jacksonville and what I see in the Rams, I just think the Jaguars are so much further ahead of what the Rams on paper, and but now they have a different coach there too. I mean, Gus Bradley was definitely holding back what the Jaguars could do. I think they should have gotten rid of him a longer time ago than they did. Just like the Rams should have gotten rid of Jeff Fisher a longer time ago than they did. So I think both teams suffered from bad head coaches in the end. Yes, Jeff Fisher obviously isn't like the worst coach in the NFL history, but he's had good runs before. He has been a good coach, but sometimes when you stick to what you do for too long, eventually it's not going to work anymore. And I feel like that's what he did. And maybe that's what Gus Bradley was doing. But then again, I mean, the Jaguars with him, they were never really that good. So I like the coaching change. I think that it could allow Allen Robinson to have a bounce back year. I like Allen Robinson more than Todd Gurley. I probably won't own Todd Gurley in any of my leagues. All right,
so we're going to disagree there.
Yeah, we'll disagree, but I mean, it's not like I'm pounding the table disagreeing. To be honest, it's
right.
It's Allen Robinson and Todd Gurley,
right?
So, but I would go with Allen Robinson in my opinion. All right, here we go. Goodell equals the devil.
Yeah, great
wow.
name.
Yeah, nice. PPR plus half point per rushing attempt. Wow. I'm picking 6th in a 12-team league. Odell Beckham Jr., Evans, or McCoy. So let me get this straight. So it's a 1.5 per. Is it a 1.5 per rushing attempt?
It's PPR, but for every rushing
attempt,
right? Yeah. Every rushing attempt is a half point.
Oh my God, you got to go with running back here. What are you thinking?
Right, I think you can take Evans out of the equation. It's between Odell Beckham Jr. and McCoy for me. And then I was thinking about this, and I was like, man, I really like OBJ. And then I looked into the numbers last year, and it's got to be LaShawn McCoy for me. Last season in just regular PPR, McCoy finished with 2 more points than Odell Beckham Jr.
But you think he'll finish like that again? You don't think that was an outlier year for McCoy?
No, because McCoy's an absolute stud running back. But this is just regular PPR. He finished with 2 more points. Add in those 0.5 points per rushing attempt on 234 rushes. That's another 117 points for Shady, which means that he beat out Odell Beckham Jr. by 119 points last year in this scoring format. That's an easy call for me. It's got to be Shady.
Yeah, I agree too. The only thing that worries me is just, I guess the age thing, and to be honest, when you look back at Shady's numbers, I mean, really last year was probably his best numbers of his career.
There's nobody behind him though. Same system too.
It's true. I mean, there's nobody behind him. No
Gillis to vulture those touchdowns either.
That's true too. But I don't know. They could get cute and throw Jonathan Williams in there. Probably not, but. The other thing that bothers me is he's always a guy with the hamstrings, always has something wrong with his hamstrings, always scaring you every week on the questionable list. If it were regular PPR, I would take Odell. Yeah, I mean, sure. It wouldn't be close. But yeah, I have to agree. I mean, 0.5 per rushing attempt, LaShawn McCoy in a system that he owns by himself, it really is kind of a no-brainer here.
Yeah, it's got to be LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, it's got to be LaShawn McCoy. I wonder though if he looked into Melvin Gordon and saw, because I almost would maybe take Melvin Gordon over LaShawn McCoy. I don't know. I feel like he'd be a little safer. What do you think about that, Chris?
I have Melvin Gordon ranked above McCoy anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, if Melvin Gordon is there, I mean, and if he was available because if you're picking 6th, I would think he would be there. Especially if you're picking between Odell Beckham and McCoy. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't like Melvin Gordon, but I think I would, in that instance, probably take Melvin Gordon over LaShawn McCoy or Odell Beckham.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon in 13 games had 20 more carries than LaShawn McCoy did. So, fewer yards, but 20 more carries in only 13 games. I would take Melvin Gordon over all Odell Beckham, Mike Evans, and LaShawn McCoy. Yeah. But if it's just between those 3, it's definitely Shady.
Yep. Okay. All right, let's move on here. The 7th question here. Three-Eyed Raven. How do you value Jacksonville receivers this year? Can Robinson return to rookie form, and why isn't anybody talking about Marquise Lee? Okay, so we just start off. I mean, we did talk a little bit about Allen Robinson so far this show. I still think he can bounce back. He won't bounce back to what he did a couple of years ago because, scoring 14 touchdowns, no, like that's not a typical year for a receiver. That's an outlier. So can he finish with maybe 10 touchdowns or 9 or 10 touchdowns? I could see that. I mean, he's the leading receiver. He has been a red zone threat. I mean, yes, he's also got a lot of his production though that year from 20 yards out. So maybe he's not really the best red zone threat. And they do have Leonard Fournette, but I still think he can bounce back. Absolutely, I think he can bounce back. And Marquise Lee, I don't know. Maybe in deeper formats I would look into Marquise Lee, but with them shifting to the run game and bolstering the defense, that's the way they want to go. They want to focus on the run and use, Allen Robinson as their guy to throw teams off when they're focusing on the run. And every other receiver is just kind of there to get a first down, in my opinion. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, first off, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Three-Eyed Raven is talking about Allen Robinson's 2015 season, not his rookie year. His rookie year was 2014, and It was okay. 2015 is when he just went absolute bananas and just balled out all year long. So I'm going to assume you're talking about that one. Like I said, Robinson is still the wide receiver to own in Jacksonville, but I'm back again. They want to be a running team. They ran the fewest red zone plays in the NFL. His yards per catch also decreased significantly, 17.5 yards per catch down to 12.1. So if you're going to own a Jacksonville wide receiver, he's the guy to go with. Now, if you decide to go, running back in your draft, and you grab, let's say, Zeke and then Todd Gurley and then Isaiah Crowell, and then in the 4th round, Allen Robinson's there as your wide receiver 1, I'd be totally okay with that. If you went 3 wide receivers, I'd take him as 3 running back, I'd take him as my wide receiver 1 if I had to, but only if I didn't have any better options before. In regards to Marquise Lee, I like him as a late-round flyer, guy you can probably draft in the very last round, or even goes undrafted and you pick him up off waivers. He's a good guy that you can put in during bye weeks. He's someone that it's either boom or bust. He's either going to get 3 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, or he might put up 1 for 6 yards. But he did win me a couple weeks last year, so I do like Marquise Lee as a late-round flyer.
Well, there you go. Let's move on to... what is this, like your best buddy? Colt Strong, Chris?
Yeah, great name.
Who is more likely to break out this season, Crockett Gilmore or Eric Swoop? So, I'm going to let you start, Chris. I kind of already know what you're going to say, but go ahead, Chris. Let me hear what you have to say first.
Well, I mean, we've been waiting for Crockett Gilmore to do anything for a couple seasons now, and he just hasn't shown it. It's Eric Swope for me, and I think that's got to do with the departure of Dwayne Allen. I think the Ravens, since they lost Benjamin Watson and Dennis Pitta, I guess Benjamin Watson they haven't completely lost, but is dealing with an injury. Dennis Pitta is out for season. I think there's a rumor that they're going around that they're going to sign Gary Barnidge, and if they do, he's going to be the main tight end in Baltimore. The Colts have always used in recent memory 2 tight ends. Now maybe they favor one a little bit more than the other, but when we had Fleener and Allen, both of them were playing, so it was kind of frustrating figuring out which one you wanted to play each week. Fleener left. Then last year we had Dwayne Allen and Jack Doyle. Once again, doing the same thing. Once Dwayne Allen he gets injured every single year. Once he got injured, then they started bringing Eric Swope in. Well, he was, getting into the mix. Swope is a capable tight end. Started getting worked in towards the end of the season. I don't think either of these guys is going to break out. I don't think that either one's going to have a breakout season, but I do think Eric Swope is going to have more points than Crockett Gilmore.
Like, my thought is, like, Ravens tight ends have basically always busted at this point. I mean, maybe they'll put up a couple good games here and there. You got to also think, too, like, so say the Ravens signed Gary Barnidge, but they may not, though, because they also have Max Williams as well. Rookie they drafted, 2 years ago now, I think? Or is this the second year?
Still haven't seen much from him either.
Right. So, I mean, this is a guy, though, who could emerge this season and take over Crockett Gilmore's job if he plays better. I mean, he's still developing. So I guess I would go with Eric Swoop. but it's not like I'm excited to get Eric Swoop. Like,
right,
you know,
neither of these guys. I'm not going to draft either of these guys. They'll be waiver wire pickups for sure.
Sure, right. Like if your tight end gets hurt and you need to fill in or something a week because they have a good matchup, or maybe they're getting hot for a couple weeks. Like, but that's about it. Like these guys aren't sexy options to me.
Not even on the radar.
No. But thanks, Colt Strong, for having us talk about Eric Swoop and Crockett Gilmore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to take this time before we continue, guys. We have talked about the app SleeperBot quite often. We're big fans. It's kind of how this show got its start, actually. We all came from there, from meeting each other on there, and created this show to help out everybody, from fans to, of course, as we always mention, our friend Rob. But you know what's really cool about SleeperBot, Chris, is that they finally have an area where we can reach the fans and interact with them like never before. I mean, we have now our own SleeperWire channel that you guys can subscribe to, and you'll get any question you have in your head answered by us on the show. And we have dozens of people who can help you out, aside from just like guys like myself and Chris. But, if you tag us, I'm at SWNick. And Chris, where can they tag you?
Professor Chris.
Yeah, so you guys tag us individually. And, of course, we have a lot of other guys you can tag. What's Hoose's? Do you remember? He's
Prophet Hoose.
Yeah, he's at Prophet Hoose.
Yep.
So if you have a favorite here, reach out to us. Me and Chris are on there a lot, though. So if you want to reach out to us at SleeperBot, get a question answered real quick, we'll respond to you. Really, we've been pretty good. I mean, we get the notification when you guys tag us, and we get right on there and we'll answer your questions. So, guys, go download the SleeperBot app and subscribe to the SleeperWire channel.
And real quick, I don't want to forget the guys over at the Fantasy Life app either. Want to give them a shout out because half of these questions come from the Fantasy Life app. Matthew Berry's app, it's a different setup than SleeperBot, but you can post images with questions. You can make polls in there. It's kind of a unique setup. So I'm on there at Professor Chris, and Nick is on there at SleeperWire Nick as well. So you can hit us up on the Fantasy Life app too.
All right, let's get back to questions though. Hoff, a Hall of Famer, I would say, is what that stands for, if I had to guess, but maybe it doesn't. But Hoff, H-O-F, asks us, which Tampa Bay running back would you pair with Martin in a PPR? So this one's easy for me. It's Jacquizz Rodgers. Charles Sims is he's a third down back. That's his only role. There was a lot of times where people would say, if Doug Martin goes down, Charles Sims is the guy to own. But really, after last year, it's not even close. I mean, we saw what happened. It was great when both of them went down, actually, because then Jacquizz Rodgers was a beast. I mean, he was the guy to own, and he was living up to, where you pick him up. So
they're giving him 30-plus carries.
Yeah. So, I know they added some weapons in the receiving game, but that doesn't really scare me. Deshaun Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised if he's injured some point. He's always got hamstring issues. So, if he goes down and then, they're basically almost back to the same place where they were last year, except they have O.J. Howard. And we'll see, rookie tight ends don't usually make quite that much of an impact, as Chris has always said, and I agree with. So I've in each mock draft I've done, I've always tried to get Doug Martin. And at the end of the draft, I always get Jacquizz Rodgers because nobody takes him, ever.
It's the same thing for me. It's Jacquizz. The Charles Sims as a starting running back experiment didn't work last year. When Martin was out, it was Jacquizz who got the work. Sims was sort of an afterthought.
He got hurt last year, Charles.
He did. He got hurt as well, but even when he was playing, he wasn't what they wanted him to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jacquizz Rodgers, he was really good in place of Doug Martin for the most part. They gave him a ton of carries. So this year, if you can get Jacquizz Rodgers for the first 3 weeks with that workload, then you have a top 5 potential running back in Doug Martin. Let's face it, Doug Martin is top 5 potential. I'm not saying he's going to be top 5, but he has been that in the past, top 5 potential. And then if he gets, hurt or suspended again, you still have Jacquizz Rodgers. So it's definitely Jacquizz Rodgers. It's no contest here.
Yeah, when you consider where you're getting Martin and Jacquizz Rodgers, it might be one of the most valuable like, you might be getting the most bang for your buck. You know what I mean? Like, because you're getting Doug Martin in the 6th round, and then Jacquizz Rodgers, nobody's thinking of him. I mean, you know, if you have Doug Martin, nobody will touch Jacquizz Rodgers at all. Right. So you'll have both of them for quite the draft price. So, yeah, this is a guy, sign me up. I'm going to be targeting them in many of my drafts this season.
A couple of seasons ago, when Percy Harvin was still playing, one of my fantasy team names was Jacquizz on her Percy.
There you go. Nice.
Do you know how old Jacquizz Rodgers is, by the way? Doesn't he seem like he's ancient?
Yeah, like that's the feeling I get, but let me guess, you're going to tell me, is he under the age of 30?
Yes, he's 27.
Wow, no kidding.
Right? Yeah, he's only 27 years old. Doug Martin's 28.
Huh.
Isn't that crazy?
That's really crazy, because it feels like Jacquizz Rodgers has been on like a ton of teams at this point. You know, I know he's on the Bears, he was on the Falcons, now he's on the Buccaneers.
It seems like it was a decade ago that he was on the Falcons.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, only 27
weird.
years old. So once I didn't even know that last year. I picked him up because Martin went down, and that first game he gets 30 carries, and I was like, this guy is going to break. But he's only 27 years old.
Yeah, that's really crazy. But all right, let's move on though. We got some more questions here. We're starting to run down. You know, we're about a little more than halfway through now. So let's do it. Jaden Swinger won. He got 2 questions today. Oh, I see why he got that second question in here, Chris. I see why.
Yep.
I got it.
You do.
All right. Well, let's go on with the first one that has nothing really to do with you, but you'll give your input anyways. Will Josh Doctson have a big role this year? You know, I'm going to say no. But I'm going to say no. It's kind of like, because you look at what they have. He's the number 3 guy. He's the guy who's trying to take over the Deshaun Jackson role, I think, in the fact that he's like the deep guy. But I don't think he's going to be nearly as successful as Deshaun Jackson has been being that deep threat guy. And you got Terrell Pryor, Jamison Crowder, and Jordan Reed. So really in receiving threats, he's like number 4. So I don't think he's. I mean, unless one of these guys go down, like, you know, and by guys I mean like Terrell Pryor or Jamison Crowder, I really don't see Josh Doctson becoming really much of anything. Maybe again, like I mentioned in the Jacksonville comment, I mean, maybe he becomes a guy that they just use to get a first down. I don't think he becomes anything more than that, and it'll be sparingly at best. But what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, he's still the wide receiver 3 in that offense, even after the departure of Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson. You'd think those guys leaving, he would, you know, not be the number 3 anymore, or not be the number 4. Now he's the number 3. Pryor should be the number 1. Crowder's definitely the number 2, who can put up number 1 weeks. Jordan Reed is still the number 1 target for Kirk Cousins. Doctson could be useful as a bye-week fill-in, maybe due to injury, but the question was, will Josh Doctson have a big role this year? No, I don't see him stepping into a big role over those other 3 guys who are definitely more of a priority for Cousins than his wide receiver 3.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's a big no for me, too. All right, well, Jaden Swinger 1 gets another question in here, thanks to Chris' completely biased feelings.
Hey, these 16 questions are the 16 that we submitted. I didn't leave any out.
I hear you. Is Dante Moncrief worth the hype in Dynasty?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it, Chris. Go ahead.
I mean, why is he not worth the hype in Dynasty? He's a stud. He's not going to get you those 100+ yard games very often. That's just never been his game. But he's basically good for 50 yards and a touchdown. I mean, 7 touchdowns in 9 games last season. Those 7 touchdowns were in only 30 catches. So if you spread that out at 90 catches, that's a 21 touchdown season. Now I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but almost 25% of his catches were touchdowns last year. That pace isn't going to keep up, but Moncrief is definitely a great number 2 for the Colts. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be someone that you can regularly put into your lineup, not just during bye weeks.
Okay. I'll bring it back down to earth a little bit. It's a no. I don't think he's a stud. I think that he's completely touchdown reliant. He also has to play like a full season, which he hasn't. The guy's always hurt. No, I mean, listen, it's impressive what Chris said, the stats that he had, in 30 catches, he got 7 touchdowns. Yeah, but that screams touchdown reliant. And you said it yourself, he won't put up 100-plus yard games. It's 50-yard games, and he needs a touchdown.
Let me correct you real quick. Last year, he's played 3 seasons. His first 2 were all 16 games.
Okay. Well,
so last year he played in 9 games.
Okay, fair enough. But those first 2 seasons, it didn't feel like he was really yes, he was obviously the number 2 receiver in the second year, but it didn't feel like it was somebody that I needed to have on my team. Who I wouldn't classify him, as you said, a stud. I think
he's going to be, and this is Dynasty we're talking about. In 2015, he's 64 for 733 and 6 catches as a sophomore. I think he's going to be someone that you're going to want. I think he's worth the hype in a Dynasty league.
I'm sorry. I'll take no on this one. Chris will give you a yes.
And it's not because he's a cold. If he'd asked the same thing about Philip Dorsett, I would have been like, hell no.
Well, I mean, that one's probably more obvious.
But no, I do like Moncrief quite a bit. He's got great hands, too. He's great on third down.
I mean, I don't think he's terrible. I don't know. It just feels like he's never, obviously he got injured last year, but then the 2 years prior, I mean, I don't know. He wasn't consistent getting his, I'm sorry. The way I value players is based on what they can do consistently week to week. I don't like looking at their, end of year stats. I mean, I will, but I don't base a lot of my decisions on who I like and who I don't off of what they did at the end of the year. I look at what they did on a week-to-week basis, and if they were consistent, then I like them. But Moncrief doesn't scream consistency. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is from Jigsaw. Which of the bigger-name wide receivers that have changed teams over the offseason do you want to draft the most, and who do you want to draft the least? Right? I mean, that's what he's asking, right?
Yeah, who do you want? Okay. Which one do you want the most? Which one do you want the least? So, if we're talking about the most, it's Alshon Jeffrey for me. Right. I have a whole bunch of good stats. We're about to do a great debate over Alshon versus Allen Robinson. Alshon, he's going to went to the Eagles. This is a very, very pass-happy offense. Carson Wentz is a rookie, threw the ball the 5th most times in the NFL last season. The Eagles are a passing team. Good developing young quarterback. Alshon is a big target who catches the ball over defenders. This is a stat I thought was really cool, a 66.7% contested catch rate, which means that when both he and a defender or two are going for a ball, he ends up with the ball 2/3 of the time. Alshon Jeffrey he can just outmuscle his defenders when they're going for the ball with him. That's pretty great. Like I said, the Eagles ran the 5th most passes. They also had the 5th most plays in the red zone last season. We talked about Allen Robinson and Jaguars being dead last. The Eagles ran the 5th most plays in the red zone. That's great news for Alshon Jeffrey. So it's definitely Alshon for me. That's the one I want the most.
Okay, what about the least?
Were there really any other big-name wide receivers that went to bad teams?
I mean, there was Pierre Garçon.
Yeah, but Pierre Garçon, I think, is going to be great.
I do, too.
I don't not want him. We had Terrell Pryor move.
Yeah, Terrell Pryor. I mean, honestly, now that we look at it, because honestly, I didn't have really a least either. That's why I was kind of waiting to see who you picked.
If I had to pick somebody who put together a decent season last year, who I don't think will put together a decent season this year or isn't going to be great, that's Kenny Britt. But,
okay.
Kenny Britt is not... I guess he's a bigger name, but he's not a big fantasy name.
Yeah.
But that would be the wide receiver that I want the least to change teams. Going to the Browns.
Yeah, I guess that would be my least. Listen, I mean, I wish, sometimes I think, like, it depends on my day. Sometimes I'm like, man, I wish Alshon Jeffrey was still with the Bears. And then there's, like, some days where I'm like, it's good that he's not with the Bears. Because it's like, he was kind of a headache, Guy always was injured, came up in the injury report. Guy who, got himself suspended last year, which was really annoying as well. Not that we were going anywhere, but like, You know, like, you don't want your player doing that. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like Alshon Jeffrey is not really going to live up to the hype of being there, with the Eagles. Maybe he will, but I don't really see it. I like Pierre Garçon going to the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan and playing with Brian Hoyer as his quarterback better, actually. I just think there'll be more consistency there, and it's safer, I think. And I like where you're able to get Pierre Garçon in comparison to Alshon Jeffrey. So I like I like Pierre Garçon, and I really like Terrell Pryor's landing spot with the Redskins even more than I do with Alshon Jeffrey, to be honest. So
Let me ask you, Alshon or Allen Robinson, who would you take?
Man. Well, since they're like going in the 4th round, that'd probably be a round where I'm grabbing a running back, honestly. But
I'm not saying who would you take in the 4th. Which one would you rather have?
I don't want any of them. Like, I really don't want either one. But I guess I'd probably take Allen Robinson.
All right, I was just curious. All right, let's move on.
All right, yeah, we're getting close to the end, guys. So we're gonna run through some of these questions here. Zipperbs 8. Which late round starting running back, Stewart, West, Kelly, Forte, are you most and least confident in taking? Okay, so
this was a good question.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be Jonathan Stewart that I'm most confident in taking, just because I think he'll still have a role there with Christian McCaffrey, especially because there's still concerns right now that like Cam Newton may not be able to check down the ball to Christian McCaffrey like they want him to, because they want him to change his whole style of how he plays quarterback. So you got to think Jonathan Stewart's still going to have a role, and you're getting him late anyways to pair with Christian McCaffrey. So I like that. And absolute least is Forte, because I just don't think he has it anymore there, and it's with the Jets. And
the Jets did say they want Forte to be the workhorse still.
They say that, but I don't think he's got it anymore. I think we saw that last year. I mean, because he lost his job. Like, I mean, listen, I'm not saying Bilal Powell is like, I don't know, like, I mean, it's Bilal Powell. Like, this guy's been in the league for quite a while now, and like, he's outdoing Matt Forte. I'm sorry, but like, to me, that screams you lost it. Bilal Powell has never been really anything in this league until last year. So. But go ahead, Chris. Who do you got?
Wow, you said Bilal Powell's been in the league forever and hasn't really done anything. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, Nick, you should have fact-checked that. And I look it up, and he's been in the league since 2011.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Anyways, that just
you didn't. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I was thinking like 3. No, it's 2011. That's crazy. Anyways, the guy I'm least confident in is Terrence West. When I'm thinking season long, Woodhead's gonna get the 3rd down work. Dixon's gonna be back from his suspension after week 4. Like I said, I know it's coach speak, but the Jets have said that Forte is still the workhorse. I don't necessarily think he is. That's just what they've said, and they said that in June, so it definitely is coach speak. But I'm just not confident in Terrence West. The guy I'm most confident in is Jonathan Stewart, just like you. And I was listening to one of the Fantasy Footballers podcasts from this week. They were talking about old and bland named players. and Andy Holloway comes on and goes, just so you know, I'm going to absolutely ruin Jonathan Stewart's ADP because I'm going to talk about him so well. And I was like, oh, damn it, Andy. Don't do that because I don't want to have to take him earlier. But no, I know the Panthers drafted Christian McCaffrey, but Jonathan Stewart is still their starting running back, and he's got like a 9th or 10th round ADP right now. That's crazy. Ron Rivera and the Panthers in general, they just want Cam Newton to run less because he gets hit all the time and they don't call flags on him. So Stewart should be getting more goal line carries. That's going to lead to more touchdowns, more yards. McCaffrey's good, don't get me wrong, but he's still a rookie. Jonathan Stewart is still the starter. So I think Stewart is – I would love to take him in the 10th round as my RB3 or RB4 on my team.
All right, let's move on. We got 3 more questions left and only a few more minutes. So let's see what we can do here, Chris. Let's try to power through. We apologize, but at least a couple of you guys here that have asked some questions at the end. We've already answered a couple earlier in the show. So let's go to it. Soul, you're back with early predictions for top rushing touchdowns and yards, receiving touchdowns and yards.
Yep.
Okay.
We don't need to go in depth in this, just a quick prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a fan of David Johnson. I still think he's a opponent to lead the yard in rushing yards, and I think he could do it again in rushing touchdowns as well.
Yeah, I've got David Johnson for rushing touchdowns too.
Yeah, and as far as receiving goes, I think this could be Antonio Brown stepping up again. I think he could reach the top again. I think
touchdowns or yards.
I think in both.
Okay,
I'm thinking both.
Yeah. So I've got David Johnson in rushing touchdowns, Zeke in rushing yards, receiving touchdowns. I think Julio is going to step it up this year, and he's going to lead in receiving touchdowns. And I'm going to call on my boy, T.Y. Hilton, leading in receiving yards for the second year in a row.
Okay. All right. Robert 1011 asks us, in full point PPR, is it worth it to take one or two solid top tier running backs in the first 2 rounds and then go wide receiver heavy until the late rounds and grab backups like Woodhead, Riddick, and Kamara? No. I don't think that's the absolute smart way to do it. I mean, I definitely want to try and get a running back in the first round, one of the top guys. But if you can't, you take one of the top receivers and just, try to grab a running back in the second round because you don't want to reach in any way, shape, or form. I just like to mix it up. I don't go by one system. I go by best available. If I think the receiver is going to be better than the running back that's available, I'll take the receiver. If the running back I think is going to be better than the receivers available in that round, I'm taking the running back. And I'm doing this for probably the next, the first 5 to 6 rounds before I'm thinking of any other position.
Yeah, I don't really go best player available. I never really subscribed to that. And I understand why people might want to do that. But I think you need at least one stud running back this season, even in PPR. Now, granted, you take what the draft gives you. If you're at the 10th pick and the first 9 picks have been running backs, yeah, you're going to take a wide receiver.
Right.
But just I've done, hundreds of mocks at this point, it feels like. If I go wide receiver, taking what the draft has given me, and I miss out on, say, Crowell or Lamar Miller in the 3rd round, I'm usually not happy with my team. So yeah. I want one of those top 10 guys. So no matter where I am in the first 2 rounds, I want at least one of them. I think you need to take at least one stud running back. Just from what I've seen, I'm generally not happy if I don't get one of those top 10.
Oh, yeah. Listen, what I mean by best player available, I should have been a little more clear. Like the first 2 rounds, I think no question you need at least one stud wide receiver and one stud running back. And then after that, I try to go accordingly. If the 3rd round has a better running back than the wide receivers, I'll take the running back. If the 4th round has a better receiver than the running backs there, I'll take a receiver. I do try to go running back, receiver, but I go with best player available, and most time I stick to a running back receiver type of theme.
Right.
But I won't reach is what I'm saying. I won't ever reach if if the running backs, because running backs are going fast in the first 3 rounds. If there's shit at running backs in the 4th round, like there's not guys like Crowell and other guys that I've liked in the 4th round, that I'm not reaching there.
Right. This question was in particular in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. So, but I go running back, receiver, running back, depending on who's available where I'm drafting.
I do think it is important to take at least one.
Yep. All right. Last question here. Ryan, 26301, asks us, Hopkins, Baldwin, or Demaryius Thomas in a PPR league? And for me, that's easy. It's Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Until we see DeAndre Hopkins work well with another quarterback, it's not even close. We know the relationship between Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson. It's pretty clear that they're on the same page, and he's their number 1 receiving threat there, even above Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, you had, in our very first great debate this year, we did Amari Cooper versus Doug Baldwin, and you brought a lot of great stats and just a lot of good info about Doug Baldwin. I do think fantasy-wise, he's the guy I like the most. Hopkins, I think, is the most talented of the three. Demaryius Thomas is the second most. I think Doug Baldwin is actually the least talented as a wide receiver of the three of them. But fantasy-wise, it's got to be Doug Baldwin of those three. He's finished as a wide receiver 1 for 2 straight years. I'd probably take, if I had a running back in the first round, I'd probably take running back over Baldwin. Because I've seen, you know what wide receiver is going to be available around him.
Mm-hmm.
I'd take a running back over him and then take Hopkins or Demaryius Thomas in the next round. But if I had to choose one of those three, it'd be Baldwin.
Yeah, like I would like to get Baldwin more as my wide receiver 2 than my wide receiver 1.
Right.
It's weird, like, because I think Hopkins and Demaryius Thomas, they have higher ceilings, but it's the quarterback that really ruined it for me with them. Chris, we've done a full mailbag, answered 16 questions.
All right.
Could you imagine if we had Hoosh here, we would have only answered 8?
You're being generous.
I thought you were going to say I was being mean. Thank you. Thank you for being honest. Oh, we love you, Hoosh, but come on. Guys, before we close out the show, I want to tell you guys about the SleeperWire Pro Am League. This is a great league. A lot of great experts that are going to be a part of this with us doing a fantasy football league. We got guys like Matt Harmon and Marcus Grant, some great guests we've had in the past on the show. Jake Seeley from Roto Experts. Fantasy Life app is going to be there. SleeperBot's going to be a part of it. You got Pony Keg Sports is going to be a part of it. Clock Dodgers. Chris, I know I'm missing some names, but I don't have the list in front of me.
Dynasty Nerds, Dynasty Happy Hour.
There you go. Right, and not only will you see all of those on the website, you can actually be a part of the league. When you go to robsgofundme.com page and donate at least $10 to his cause, that will get you a chance at entering into this league. Chris, I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? Like, everybody should be doing this.
Oh, yeah. If you think you're good at fantasy football, this is your chance to prove it and to help out a great cause.
SleeperBot, I'm at SWNick, and also on the Fantasy Life app, I'm at SleeperWire Nick. So you guys can follow me there and ask me a bunch of questions, whatever you want. And again, also SleeperWire.com. So please, guys, go check us out. Go support us if you can, and mainly support Rob. For Chris, I'm Nick Summerall saying so long, everybody. Good night.
Peace.